Hello everybody, hope you guys are enjoying your day. Today we're going to be looking at Tropical Storm Gonzalo, which is currently formed just east of the Caribbean. It's going to be heading into the Caribbean over the next couple of days. It's formed into a tropical storm. The National Hurricane Center has named it a tropical storm as of early this morning. And we also have Invest 91L there, which is south currently of the Panhandle, Florida, and it's going to be making its way westward into parts of Texas and Louisiana. So let's get right into it here with your current National Weather Service page. We have some red flag warnings in effect for parts of California, Nevada, Arizona, Utah, and into Idaho and Oregon. We also have some heat advisories for parts of the Mid-Atlantic and the coastal southeast there. So when you're from South Carolina to New Jersey and Pennsylvania, seeing those heat advisories. Now, here is your current 5-day graphical outlook from the National Hurricane Center. They have this disturbance marked out over the next 48 hours. We have a 40% chance of development, and within the next 5 days, a 50% chance of development. And this currently is Invest 91L. We also have Gonzalo there on the bottom part of your screen right now, and it's right over here. And we're going to go into a little bit more depth on that in a little bit at the middle to end of the video. So here is your current 5-day graphical outlook for the Eastern Pacific, and we have a little disturbance just west of Central America there, over parts south of Mexico as well. We have over the next 48 hours a 0% chance of development, and within the next 5 days a 20% chance of development. And then for Douglas there, which was named I believe yesterday, and that's currently off shore. It's about a few thousand miles southwest of about Baja California there. Now, here is currently where Invest 91L currently is sitting, and again, it's south of about Alabama and the Panhandle of Florida there. So here is currently your model track guidance from some of these main models, and all of them have it hitting parts of coastal Texas there, and pretty much within about a 50-mile radius of each other. So generally, the impacts are going to be the same, even if it really doesn't even matter really where it exactly landfalls. Most of these areas are going to get some quite torrential rainfall out of this, and that's going to be the main threat out of this. Probably about 5 to about 8 inches of rainfall with some locally higher amounts over parts of the Houston area. So that is going to be a bit of a concern here. Now, here is your current model intensity guidance, and we have a few of these models, actually about half or about a little bit over half of those models bringing it to a tropical storm status, and then we have the other half of those models bringing it just down to a high-end tropical depression. So this should turn into some sort of tropical depression, but it is looking a little bit more likely that it will become a tropical storm, maybe even a hurricane. One of these models does bring it to a hurricane, and that looks quite unlikely at this point, though. So here is your chances of seeing a tropical depression from the European ensemble models, and this is a collection of about 50 or 40 to 50 models, and they put them all together, and this is the percentage of those models that actually show tropical depression force wind speeds. And you see 95 to almost 100% of these models showing those tropical depression wind speeds. And you see they also impact parts of coastal Texas where you're still being impacted, 65 to about 90% chance of being impacted with those tropical depression wind speeds. So here is your rainfall totals from the European model, and you see we do have a lot of the areas over parts of southern Texas seeing good, that would be about 7 to about 10 inches, maybe even a little bit more in those purples and pinks for parts of southern Texas again there. So anywhere in those reds, you're also seeing 2 to 5 inches. So you see that wide area anywhere from Louisiana to Texas seeing those 2 to 5 inch amounts. So let's start looking at Douglas, which is in the Eastern Pacific, and that's going to be impacting parts of Hawaii. Now, it's currently at about 127 degrees west by about 12 degrees north. Now, here's your graphic from the National Hurricane Center, and they are showing a hurricane developing sometime right around tomorrow morning. It should become a hurricane, and as it sometime by this afternoon into tomorrow morning, it should become a hurricane, and it looks to sustain hurricane force strength by until it hits about that 3-day time frame as we get into late night on Friday, and then it downgrades to tropical storm as it starts to head closer to Hawaii there, and you'll probably see some tropical storm impacts for parts of Hawaii, especially southern Hawaii. They're seeing the most impacts. Now, here is your model track guidance for this storm, and you can barely pick out where Hawaii is because all these models are kind of covering it up, but it's right around here. Most of these models have a direct impact to the big island of Hawaii. Now, here is your current wind speed probabilities for tropical storm force wind speeds, and you see we have over a 90% chance to about 100% chance of seeing those tropical storm force wind speeds throughout this area. Now, here's your 50-knot wind speed probabilities, 58 miles per hour, and we have a 50 to 60% chance of that. And your hurricane wind speed probabilities, and I think this is again a little bit low. I think they should be probably between 50 and 70% over parts of the eastern Pacific. We have about a 10 to 20% chance officially from the National Hurricane Center, and I wouldn't be surprised if this actually goes up in the percentage chance. Now, here is your model intensity guidance, and we have most of these models actually, except for about a couple of them, bring it to a category 1 at least. A few of these models bring it to a category 2, and you see this kind of line of models that only go out about 24 hours, but they have this strengthening into a category 2, and you can kind of tell by the trajectory that they would most likely turn it into a category 3 or a high in category 2, maybe even higher if they were to go out farther. So within the next 12 to 24 hours, expect some sort of category 1 hurricane in the eastern Pacific, and that would actually be your first hurricane of the Pacific hurricane season, except for the western Pacific. They've already seen hurricanes, but for the central and eastern Pacific, you haven't seen a hurricane yet. Neither have you seen a hurricane for parts of the Atlantic, which we will be talking about right now, pretty much. So here is your current tropical storm Gonzalo here, and you see we have a fairly good signature here on the infrared loop. We have a low pressure system centered right around here, and it is a very small storm. If you were to take this a little bit more zoomed out, you would see how small this is. Just because this is zoomed in, it looks a little bit more, a little bit bigger. But if this were to be a little bit more zoomed out, you would definitely see how small of a system this really is in terms of how wide it is. Now, here is currently the surface plot for this. Now we have this is currently is at 43 degrees west and 10 degrees north in the just east of the Caribbean. Now here is your official graphic from the National Weather Service, and they are bringing this as a tropical storm all the way until Monday, and most likely beyond that. If it can sustain a tropical storm, or even if it can sustain itself until it hits about south of Jamaica and south of Cuba, you have some very warm waters within that region, and you also have a lot of heat content stored up in the ocean. You have not seen a hurricane or any sort of tropical system move through this part of the ocean or this part of the Atlantic just yet. So this is untapped water, and it is definitely well above average in terms of your sea surface temperatures, and it will support a hurricane if it were to move through that area and if it can sustain itself. Now, if you don't want development, you really want this to make landfall with the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and that would really weaken the system as it starts to move over land, and that would really help the system. If it's going to just stay as a tropical storm, don't expect too many impacts, but if it does, turn into a hurricane, then we really have a lot more to worry about. Now, here is your Atlantic hurricane season cyclone name, and this is the records for the earliest named storm by letter. So we've already broken, I believe, 4 out of the 7 potential ones that we could have broken. We broke it for Gonzalo, Faye, Edward, and into Cristobal there. So 4 out of the 7, and this goes back all the way into the 1800s for the earliest named storms per letter, and we're kind of matching 2005. Now, 2005, we're actually 2 days ahead of them. We were about 15 days ahead of them for Faye, and now we had a big lull in the pattern, and we really didn't see too much for quite a while. So now we're a little bit closer to the 2005 season, but we'll have to see. We could potentially break the H named storm. The earliest was again in 2005, and we'll see if we can break that with this storm that's currently Invest 91L. Looks like it has a decent chance of becoming the next tropical storm. We would have to see that within, and we'll definitely break that record. If it does turn into a tropical storm, we'll definitely break the H record as well. So it's a very hyperactive season, and I wanted to show you this because it's not typical we see this many storms this early into the season. So here is your tropical storm force wind speed probabilities, and you see we have about a 40 to 50% chance of that I think it's a little bit higher, probably around 60 to 70% chance. Now here's your 50 knot wind speed probabilities, 58 miles per hour, and you see we have about a 20 to 30% chance of that, and they don't show any chance for hurricane wind speeds, which I think is unrealistic. I think there's a chance that we do see hurricane force wind speeds. Now, here's your model track guidance for this system, and you see much of these models bringing this south of the Caribbean islands, so it looks to stay over those warm 90-degree Fahrenheit waters, so that is really going to help it strengthen. Now here is your GEFS tracks, your GFS ensemble models, and you see most of these models actually bring this, they're a little bit all over the place. Some of these have it curving around a high pressure system right around here. Other models have this high pressure system moving further to the west, and that would actually curve the track to somewhere within this region right here. So we'll have to see. A lot of things still could change in this forecast, and I hope to bring out my cone, my graphic for the storm as we start to get closer to this event. Probably I'll bring that cone graphic out as it starts to impact parts of the Lesser Antilles, and once it does that, I'll definitely bring out my graphic. That should be within the next 3 to 4 days of it impacting that area. So here are your Canadian ensemble models, and you see they're a little bit more all over the place. Some have it very far to the west, some have it curving north and eastward. So it really depends on this ridge of high pressure, which is currently off the coast of the east coast by a few hundred miles, maybe even 1,000 miles. So if that can stay there, then you could definitely see potentially an east coast impact with that. If this moves further to the west, impacting closer to the coastal areas, then you would see this curve into the Gulf of Mexico. So we'll have to see a lot of different possibilities with this storm. Now, here's your model intensity guidance for this, and you see potentially our first Atlantic hurricane. Most of these models still keep it as a tropical storm, although the majority of these models actually have this either as a Category 1 or a high-end tropical storm. We'll have to see, and these storms have definitely overperformed, and we've definitely underestimated them, so it wouldn't be a shocker if we do see our first hurricane of the season from Tropical Storm Gonzalo. Definitely wouldn't be too surprising given the way that this hurricane season has gone so far. Now, here's your sea surface temperatures. We're going to start to look at the environment around this system. We have very, very warm sea surface temperatures nearing 30 degrees Celsius, which is extremely warm and well above average for this time of year. That would be about 90 degrees Fahrenheit, so that is very, very warm waters. And you see pretty much the entire track, even if this does go up the east coast, if it were to curve around this high pressure system, if it were to stay here, it's still over waters that are going to be supportive of a tropical storm or a hurricane. If it were to move into the Gulf of Mexico, probably it could strengthen even more as you have even warmer waters over that region of about 30 to maybe even 31 degrees Celsius. So very, very, very warm waters over the Caribbean. Now let's look at another factor here. Here's how far down in the ocean those 80-degree temperatures, 80 degree Fahrenheit temperatures go. Now, you see, the farther they go, that actually helps the system, and because it can upwell that water, and it can also help the system grow a little bit more. And you see this 26-degree isotherm, or your 80-degree Fahrenheit temperature, goes down about 175 meters down, which is about 450 to 500 feet down in feet. So that is very, very far down, and that is kind of signifies how warm these waters are, that going 100 to 200 feet down in the ocean, you're still feeling those 80-degree Fahrenheit waters. Now, here is your ocean heat content, and we have pretty much maxed out values over the South Caribbean. So if this were to develop, and if it were to move throughout this region, it would definitely be very, very bad, and it would also help strengthen the system quite a bit. Now, that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.